A little bit of a different story. This is a bit of telling the story of how we've evolved our use of AI. So who is this guy? Co-founder and CEO of Raygun and AutoHive. I started my first business at 23, bringing me up to 19 years now. But I'm a software engineer at heart. I love building things. I love creating things. I'm still a nerd under it all. I live here in Wellington, New Zealand, and I don't trust real photos with AI around these days, so this is my family. And I've got another son coming in about 4 weeks, so I'm excited about that. So moving on, let's just talk. This is my genuine view on AI, is that we are totally underestimating the capability. And I talk about this from the field of sort of software or techies. It's really, really easy to get super excited about this line and be like, wow, this is taking off. It's going to change the world. Everything's going to immediately be different. And then while you get excited by that, back to the point you were making earlier as well, is the human part, though, is slow. All right. So if you're building a business, in my case, I have to think about this line less so than this line if I want to actually make any money. And how do we actually drive adoption? This, however, is also why you want to get started early, because it will never be easier than it is right now to pick up. I make the reference to computing, where prior to about Windows 95, it was entirely possible for you to understand every way the computer worked. And these days, you'd struggle to understand a single slice of it. It's just going to build and compound. And that adoption curve is always slow with humans. Technology has exceeded us for a while. I make the reference to COVID, when we started to see businesses coming online, and you're like, you've had quarter of a century to do it, and you took a pandemic to finally get a website. Like, that was insane to me. So thinking about the work in the age of AI. So firstly, we talk about how everybody's job in our business is to solve a problem. It's not how you do the work, it's what the problems are you're solving. And that means you want to be thinking a little bit more or increasingly about how you orchestrate the work to be done, as opposed to how will you do the work yourself. And that means that increasingly the type of work that you're doing is to manage and fine-tune those orchestrations, potentially even creating them. I don't anticipate everybody has to be able to create them, but you're going to slowly be managing agents and that capability. That also means you need to increase your understanding of externalities as well as other teams and divisions, because the span of control of an individual is growing. I saw a picture on the internet the other day, and it showed a product manager, a software developer, and a designer standing in a Mexican standoff, and each of them was saying, I can do your job now, right? The span of control is widening. But the difficulty right now is maintaining quality while increasing velocity. It's really easy to go fast and create crap, but it's quite hard to go fast and create quality outcomes at the moment. So we've sort of shifted a little bit, and I actually struggle with this in our business, because I don't actually think that we necessarily hire roles anymore. I think of it more about the attitude of the people that we're hiring. And so we now look for people who have demonstrated curiosity, strong systems thinking, good judgment, integrity, and speed. And I say to other business leaders to that point about when are we getting onto AI? You have just had 3 years of observing who in your organization is actually curious and innovative. They have stood out like a sore thumb, and everybody else is not doing that. So have you promoted and enabled those people to spread that innovation in the organization? And just to be clear, and I totally agree with the point you made about the authority coming. You need somebody in a senior role to really make it happen. But at the same time, those people should be enabling people across the organization that are putting their hands up to be those change makers. It's not a role, it's not a level, it's not a salary band, it's the attitude of the people. And you want to elevate those people. They are the key ones for ensuring that you're not being obsoleted. That also means credentials are pretty much dead in my world. I don't care about your degree. I don't care about anything. I just want to see what you can do and how you do it. And this is where it's becoming really important to start thinking about the capability of the people in the organization. New Zealand, and I understand we're a small country, high employment is important, we can be quite vulnerable. But in today's world, if you have people on the team who don't have good judgment, they just kind of don't do much, right? That's kind of safe. They don't wreck the place. That's good. And the people with good judgment, they're actually getting things done. We all know those people in our orgs. Let's not be shy about that. But the problem with AI is that these people can start to generate a lot of stuff. And so they become a real liability. I heard somebody say it's like running with scissors, and somebody corrected them and said, no, it's like running with chainsaws now, right? But the good news is that for the people that have good judgment, they are absolutely crushing it. So the delta there, I'll let you take the photo, is really big. And that, I'm obviously being a little facetious. This is the point about the human change management. How do we think about the risks and all of that? I'll also say I don't come from the regulatory world, so I'm a bit rough around the edges. But I was kind of trying to keep count of how many times we used the word risk, which was a lot, and how many times did we use the word opportunity, which is 0. And Jeff Bezos says that human beings do have a habit of overestimating risk and underestimating opportunity. But there are some risks here because it is a powerful, powerful tool, and it's only getting more powerful as every day goes by. So I just want to shift gear now to telling a bit of the actual transition. So quickly here, what is Raygun? So software diagnostics, I describe it to people who aren't in tech that we're like the black box flight recorder for software. So when it blows up or you have an error or something goes wrong or it's slow, we actually collect the metadata that helps you understand why did it blow up? Why was it slow? And we help software teams around the world improve the quality of their software. We are 97% export based, so don't really bother to market ourselves too much within New Zealand. We process billions and billions of software faults per month through our platform. And some of the international brands that we work with are folks like HBO. So if you watch the finale of Game of Thrones, all your data went through our platform. We peaked at tracking data for 87 million people watching that at one moment, which was quite a lot of data. Domino's Pizza. If you ever order a pizza and something goes wrong, sorry to say, I do know about it. They're a cool client. And there's thousands more. And I thought, since this is a New Zealand government-ish related event, I'd acknowledge a couple of folks that we do work with here. So the New Zealand Police use us to help them make sure that their software that the police force have out in the field is actually, if something goes wrong with that, it can be a material issue for them. They need to make sure that that's not a problem. Although I do joke about the money go round. They pay Raygun, I pay a speeding ticket, they pay Raygun. Elections, we've worked with them when the actual elections are on to help make sure that the websites stay up, they run quickly when people are sitting there smashing refresh, those sorts of things. But then 2023 arrives along with AI. And I know it was technically like late 2022, but this is when I noticed it. And I was a teenager in the internet sort of transition time, but I was a nerd, so I had Windows 95 poster on my wall rather than a bikini-clad woman. And so I kind of remembered that time of going, wow, okay, this is a big shift. What's going on? And I had that exact same feeling. I was like, I don't know what's changed or how it's going to change, but change is afoot. And so I recognized that we needed to elevate our understanding in Raygun so that we could have improved conversations about AI. I didn't want to just read stuff on the internet. How would we improve the conversations? So first one was open up the wallet. Make sure everybody has a ChatGPT subscription at this point. That was the AI at the time. Be willing to spend. I said to my board in, I think it was April, if anybody leaves the organization, we're not backfilling them. Didn't really know if that was a good idea at the time. It was. We were about 60 people then. And then in May, we had an AI week. So we do have the benefit that Raygun is a SaaS business. That means the money comes in whether we go to work or not. So we could pause the business for a week. There was no opportunity cost of build hours or anything like that, which I do know is a challenge when I talk to a lot of service organizations on how do they invest in their people when there's a very real dollar cost to it. We just said, we're going to do all of the customer support when we arrive in the morning, and then we're going to do AI stuff for the week. So the very first thing that we did was we had everybody in the organization do our software engineering hiring test. That included the bookkeepers, customer success people, and they could all suddenly pass our engineering test, even if they had literally never written a line of code in their life. And pardon the language, but I call the moment for when you click to AI as the oh fuck moment. The bit where you go, oh, this thing can do stuff. And that was really powerful for them, the non-engineers suddenly delivering software. By the end of that week, the Friday, we did demos. So we put everybody into teams of 3 or 4. I totally agree with your point that we need people to do stuff with this to learn. But we had systems where, they would talk to the mic and just say, hey, and they did call it Jarvis. Hey, Jarvis, I'm thinking about taking annual leave at Christmas. What's the policy to do this? And we had built a information store based on our internal documentation, and it spoke back and said, well, you need to talk to your manager. We have a 2-week shutdown period. You need to do this by this point. And really, it was all throwaway, but it was to get the team thinking about what was actually necessary to make these things, to make the technology work. And we made sure that those teams were always cross-functional. So it wasn't just engineers versus the design team versus the CS team, that sort of thing. They all had to collaborate. It was a great amount of fun. So yeah, everyone in the business built AI agents. And a couple of months later, we actually replaced working with our advertising agency with a couple of AI agents. Turns out if you can pull the data out of AdWords, it's not too difficult to make a suggestion that if you're paying $80 conversion in Iceland but 20 in London, move the budget to London. So it was quite straightforward to do that. Then 2024, and we're primarily a software development organization, but this is where coding AI really took off. And just to be clear, for folks here who maybe don't do any software development, which I imagine is most of you, the tools in the software space are probably the best AI tools that are around at the moment. So you get very quick feedback on, hey, did it work? Did it compile? Does it pass the tests? So it works really, really well in software development. So we saw across the industry widespread adoption of AI coding tools, especially in our organization. The velocity of our software delivery really started to pick up. We did allow all of the AI coding tools. We didn't just mandate one. I got to say, I feel for the people who say, we've got Copilot. Oh, Jesus, that is trash. Go and get a decent AI. But my CEO frustration, keep in mind, I don't write any code at work, but I do in the weekends just to keep my skills and understanding strong, is that the coding tools are great, but what about everybody else in the business? So I would sit there and be writing these amazing things at home in the weekend for fun, and I would come to work and Gemini would offer to summarize an email. And I'm like, what is this? This is not moving the needle for anybody else. So in my typical fashion, fine, we'll just build it ourselves, because my intention was to build the most AI-enabled organization in New Zealand. And so we began building AutoHive, an AI product for our whole business. And it was built initially to scratch our own itch. So an example of something that, we talk about how fast the innovation is going in the field of AI. And especially in 2024, I was like, but why are all of these tools single player mode? We're a business. A business is a collaboration of people. You're all sitting there in individual tools just sharing chats. So we wanted to build something that was more collaborative. I also wanted to think about what would I see as the CEO for the whole business's operations. How can I ensure a place for marketing to be able to get all their stuff done, customer success, bring it all together. I don't want everybody just running a separate tool. So this is a photo that I took that year. This is an example of a software developer on our team, and just don't expect you to understand what you're looking at there, but to set the scene, he's actually running 7 concurrent AI coding agents at once. And so that is like having a team of 7 people reporting to him that are all working faster than any human actually can. And the velocity is just phenomenal. So we come into 2025 and we ship AutoHive in late June. And that's been quite successful. We've got thousands of users signing up for it. We've had revenue beginning to grow, which is really cool. And demand for deeper integration with systems. So this kind of goes again to the agentic use. doing real work, not just answering questions. And the analogy that I often use for this is the sort of ask a question, get an answer is like the email stage of the internet. So you may remember that was a major hook for the internet back in the day. It was just, I can now get a message to the other side of the world in like milliseconds. That's cool. Nowadays, nobody's getting the internet because they go, yeah, I'm getting email, right? It's all moved further up the value chain. But right now we're at the email stage, but people are starting to ask questions about how do we actually do work with it. And AI begins to improve the general office work, so not just for our software team. So our marketing team went from, I think, 6 people down to 2, and they like trebled their output. And they are actually one of our, after the software team, they are our most aggressively heavy AI users. Again, sort of a little bit like software, you get a pretty fast feedback loop. This is actually something that I think is going to be a challenge for regulators because your feedback loop can be long. I don't know what the sandboxes were, but in effect, maybe running simulations against regulation to understand things is a way to accelerate that. But way to see this as it rolls out globally as an AI is the longer the feedback loop, the longer it's going to take for that to really take off. So take, for example, legal AI. The real fitness test on that is probably a court case. That could be a long time to check whether that contract is actually any good. So by the end of 2025, we'd seen a 500% increase in the rate that we were shipping software. And I know it was 500% because one of the things that I do in the business is at the end of every year, I present to the team everything that we've done. So every major feature, every significant enhancement, or a major bug fix. And typically, this is a slide deck of about 35 slides, double column, 15 bullet points. And I do this because people just forget what they've done in the year. They remember about the last 90 days, and I like the team to leave at the end of the year going, holy shit, we got a lot done. Normally, that deck is about 35 slides. At the end of 2025, it was 164 slides. It was ridiculous how much work we got done. This is a quick screenshot of AutoHive. So you can see here we have different team groups. Ignore some of the testing stuff. But it can fully automate any type of work that we're doing. And we're trying to move as quickly as we can to continue to enhance that product to be able to accelerate, not just for our customers, but also we're using this on our Raygun business. So I have the benefit that by having 2 businesses, I can use one as the test and the other to produce for it. And so this has been fantastic for us. We do track ROI in it as well, because this is a major other question. Is this actually worth the time? And so this effectively uses a mechanism to estimate the time that it would take to do things manually. And so this is across our team for 1 month, did 4,700 hours worth of work, would have cost, based on average salaries, about $171,000 that we probably paid, I think it was $7,000 in AI token costs to achieve that. So a pretty good ROI. And by the way, the team is now 25 people, down from 60. And I do say to people, the way I got there was that I had terrific headcount churn in 2003 and 2004. And the primary reason in the exit interviews that I got was, I'm so sick and tired of you talking about AI. I don't want to know about it. I'm leaving. Which gave me the benefit that the team that we do have is all extremely AI pilled now. They love AI, and all of those people are dragging the companies they're now at down. So, and an interesting example talking about Raygun is that because it collects software faults, one of the messages I said to the board was, I said, AI is going to destroy the Raygun business. I said, I'm selling picks and shovels to software developers, and I've just watched a giant German excavator drive past me on the street that is going to be able to start fixing this stuff automatically. So the best thing I can do is build that myself and disrupt myself. So now we actually have systems that if you were to use AutoHive, an error would be collected by Raygun, gets sent to an AutoHive agent, it puts the code in a secure container, it runs a coding agent inside it, it raises the code into a pull request on GitHub, It then has a team of agents go and review that. It goes in a loop with the coding agent. And once they're all satisfied, it will elevate to being assigned to a human to say, do you want to ship this to production? Here's the code change. And so this happens now. We will have bug fixes available within about 30 minutes of a person encountering an issue with our software, which is pretty cool. So significant ROI benefits across the business. I wanted to throw in a few key lessons. So the human in the loop is extremely important, extremely important. So we have, for example, and I've got a screenshot coming up, but any action that can be dangerous or make change, it will prompt you to approve it. We also have native mobile apps, so it'll do it via push notification. And this is going to sound like a joke, but my dream is that when I wake up in the morning, I get my phone and there's a pile of push notifications. I go, yes, 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 no, no, yes, yes. And then when I get out of bed to go brush my teeth, half my day's work is done. That is the future we should be striving for. Human behavior, however, defaults to the easiest path. And this is where it's actually more like a psychology concern when thinking about regulation, in my opinion. Because what we see is people just start going, yep, didn't read it, yep, next thing, whatever. And that's how you end up with Deloitte in Australia, getting done over for not reading their own reports. And making sure, did you really review the outputs? I don't have a strong answer for this, other than maybe saying, do you apply more AI to the problem? But to share one thing that we do in software development is if you raise a code change, the typical standard is that the same person who raises the code change cannot approve the code change. So you get a two-factor type behavior. And my suspicion is that this might be where this kind of goes, to just say, as the person who created it, you don't really want to self-review. Somebody else looking at it going, what did you actually do here? Might be the mechanism. But we see that a lot. And then the question is, who's liable when an AI goes wrong? And one of the things that I find about this, and I've put it in bold there, is I'm watching a lot of people in the tech industry kind of be like, oh, the AI did it wrong. And I'm like, it's still just software though. Like, who is the person responsible for it? Like, how much do you kind of pretend that it's the software's fault here? So a good example is Amazon's had some major outages related to their use of AI. Is it really any different to when a human being as a software developer goes and runs the wrong SQL statement versus a human being running an AI and letting it go rogue? My sense is they're actually kind of the same. But we do tend to consider AI more as an expert system. So thinking of it as assisting in decision making and not necessarily making the decisions for you, especially at this point. Data integrity is still a big problem. Context management is absolutely critical. This is also something that's really important to teach people who are working with AI. And we do need to upskill everyone to understand this. The better you understand how to work with an AI, the better the outputs you'll get from it. And there are some great organizations around Wellington as well that are helping, like AI Supercharger. And like everything in the world, garbage in, garbage out still applies. This is just a quick screenshot of the approval process in Raygun. So I get a morning email sent to myself that analyzes my calendar, cross-references it with all my emails, does a deep research with Perplexity, and sends me a report saying, here's all of your meetings today, here's everything you need to think about with these people. I thought it would be kind of gimmicky, but it turned out to actually be really, really bloody useful. So I went on a bit long, but thank you very much for having me.
Hi everyone, I'm Breccan. Also used to be a developer, also running a business for nearly as long as, probably about the same amount of time actually. I started mine's 2 years younger, I think. I've got a couple of little projects I'm talking about today. The first one is this piece of work that we did for PCO last year, which has been about improving the drafting process for legislation. And it's really been a fascinating piece of work because it's sort of been done in that trials all the way down. I know Andy will be on the panel after this and you can ask him about the broader context, but I think a big thing there was they did multiple things, not just our piece of work. They tried a lot of things, but even inside of our piece of work, I think one of the key things is the way that we've been trying lots of stuff and seeing what works. And you can sort of see that we set up on a hypothesis-based approach, that research process of going, here's all our ideas of what we think will happen. And then we started looking at how we're going to apply that to the real world. And you can see that in the kind of interface that we built. because a lot of this is about humans and testing it with humans and seeing if they actually adopt it and what works, and also making it clear enough about what's happening that we can track back their feedback and everything else and go, what's working, what's not working, what's that. So what you can see here, so if you see across the top here, it's all these little tick boxes next to coloured things. And that's basically all of the little agents that we built to go, check for this kind of a thing. And people can turn on which ones they want on, turn off what they want off. And that allows them to also see, looking down the side, we've color-coded what's feeding back different types of feedback. So that means we're testing a lot of ways of applying this content to a particular piece of drafting. We're able to get feedback targeted to what were we trying to do and improve those pieces. And people feel like they're getting good engagement because they can see the feedback improving those individual areas. And also we can target it to particular things that the workers actually go, these are the hard bits of our job. I think one of the things that when you just do the kind of not thinking too hard piece is you go, oh yeah, doing the text formatting, AI is great at that, we can trust it to do that. There's one thing in there, which is commencement clauses, which had a non-trivial amount of dedicated effort. Because when we were talking to the drafters, we were like, what are the things that a young drafter who's just started takes a lot of years to get better at it? And one of the things that popped up was commencement clauses. So we put more time into making the review that the system did of commencement clauses better, because part of the goal is not just making work easier, it's in particular making work that is hard easier. Because I think one of the things that people are learning with AI so far is it's really easy to get AI to make easy work easier. We've got less and less need for juniors who can just go and research a thing on the internet and tell us, what are the 5 ways I could do this? Because the AI is really good at that. But I think that the interesting thing is really, how can we make the AI help with stuff that is hard? So this has been a really great little project of taking that sort of creative approach to having lots of little bets, seeing which ones will work, and then being able to iterate on that as fast as we possibly can. And I think that's really key to having a good experience with rolling out AI in more complex organizations. And then I just wanted to talk a little bit about one other project we're doing recently, because I think it plays a really nice other end of the spectrum for regulators. This is for a large multinational organization that I can't quite name, but is around their procurement. And they had this problem where they provide funding to lots of different countries. The countries don't have the expertise to review against the requirements that they require that the countries that they're funding add to all of their procurements. So they needed a tool that they could actually put out to the partners that they were effectively applying policy to, which might sound a little bit similar to regulators, and help them go, hey, have you actually met this? And if not, start flagging it up really early so that people could respond to it and that kind of thing. And my favorite thing about this project is actually that we didn't build it. They had a team of their procurement people that had one young guy who was decently technically skilled, and they built their entire prototype that proved that it was a good idea by themselves by just getting started. And then they came to us when they were at, we need this productionized, we need to start, we've proved that at this level it'll work, we want to bring it up to the next level, we want it to be performing more, but they've already proven the business case by just having some motivated people do it. And I think that's a really key part of these projects and organizations, is encouraging people to just build. I think it's really easy for an organization to go, let's wait around and look at the research. The thing is, this market is moving fast. If you go and wait for someone to put out a think piece about what AI should I use to do regulation, you're already months behind. Whereas most of the stuff is also very accessible. They are trying to get it into your hands. You can go out and have a play. And you won't do the best outcome, but if you can't have a play with it and go, oh, I can see how this would work, and start doing that proof yourself, there's probably lots of other things that you can prove that way. So maybe do those ones as your initial investments. And I think that's a really valuable part of looking at this, because AI just makes it easy to start doing stuff, start deploying it, and start testing it. And that'd be my big message to everyone, is it's much better to just start doing stuff. We can help with that, but also we can help later once you've done the first version.
Hi, kia ora koutou. My name is Finton Blake, Kai Hatu Banastor, Australia at DataSing. So I'm going to talk you through a bit about what we're seeing. We work a lot with the public sector around Wellington. We started life, as Alana said, as a data engineering firm, and really we're about, enabling organizations to make better decisions with data. And up until around November 2022, to JD's kind of point, with the explosion of Gen AI, it's been restricted to system kind of data, stuff that's in rows and columns. But Gen AI has opened up this whole world of unstructured data, and it's kind of made the art of the impossible very possible. So a few observations I thought we'd start with today about what we're seeing around the place when it comes to the adoption of AI. No big surprise, Copilot was already mentioned and pilloried, but it's a good place to start. I think what we see is a lot of kind of lower value decisions and kind of transactional stuff, which Copilot lends itself quite well to, but not maybe those higher value decisions that have a higher volume of of data being thrown at it. And of course, the veracity of that is very important and what you get out at the other end. And really the main barrier hasn't changed for us in the last 2 years. I would have said 2 years ago, maybe there was two things. Info security / data privacy was a big thing, and the truth in what's coming back at you. And I think info security, data privacy has got a lot better. You know, the controls are there that weren't there before. Some of you will be familiar with the term RAG, where you can kind of zone your AI in on just your estate. That was kind of a 3-6 month project 2-3 years ago. Now it's like a little bit of a radio button job. So that's improved a hell of a lot. But the veracity and the confidence in what comes back out still a bit of a problem. You know, while we're a technology firm, you'll see I'm not the best with it from those PowerPoint stock images. But you know, the business process and the people are very important to us. And I think, you know, my own personal background, I was the worst mathematician in Ireland in the year 2000, and I've got the results to prove that if anyone wants to see them. But one of the things that I found during that time in Dublin was the intimidating kind of atmosphere in a mathematics environment, and the way that you were kind of afraid to ask the stupid question. And even with data engineering back when we kicked off in 2021, I felt, you know, terms like data science were coming into play. Never heard of it. It came about in the 2000s, but when you dig into it, it's stuff that's 400 years old. And I think people need to realize that about AI as well, and be kind of empowered and encouraged and confident to ask themselves the stupid question. So we like to start thinking about, you know, another Jeff Bezosism, keeping yourself as close to the customer as you possibly can. And with our work with Alana's team at Martin Jenkins, we're interested and we like talking to business owners, service delivery owners, you know, policy owners, and those kind of personas. Because the other observation I would say around Wellington in particular is everybody's got a list of 35 use cases. But most of those 35 use cases are kind of owned and held by IT. And I think that needs to shift a little bit. And what I want to talk about today, just in the next few minutes, and show you a little bit at the end as well, is maybe thinking beyond the Copilot use case and how that can kind of manifest. So we've got two cars here, and I just indulge me for a second with the transport analogies. We've had a few of them, but I was listening to the head of Anthropic there a few weeks back, and he said with Gen AI, it's like we've given a teenager a car, and they've come back and they've said, "Can I have it in green, and can you make it go faster?" And we've just kind of said, "Yes, no problem." But what we haven't been doing is thinking about the teenager, the persona of the teenager, the mindset of a teenager and their appetite for risk at that age. And it made me kind of extrapolate that analogy a little bit more. And the first flight was, if anybody can take a guess in 5 seconds, when the Wright brothers hit it off. Not history buffs. 1903. The first flight, the altitude was just about where that light is, 2 meters, so a little bit taller than where I am, and it went for 35 meters, so I don't know, would that be 2 tennis courts thereabouts. 1903. 1935 was the first checklist for the airline industry. And if you think about commercial flights, I think around about then, wars aside, that's when it kind of took off. You know, if you watch any films, James Bond was rattling around the Caribbean in the 1950s. Commercial flights were available. But it took that period of time to kind of move from that prototype phase into scaled usage phase. And I want to talk about a few of those little things today. So on the left-hand side, we're in the Wright brothers world where hopefully they weren't hallucinating, but they probably were when they thought it up. There's a lot of ambiguity where this could go, I guess. And when we use the kind of co-pilot experience, we don't really trust what's coming back. We kind of check it. We've got obvious performance and scale issues. And in the regulatory world, we deal with large volumes of data. You can't throw that up into the kind of chat windows or the context windows very easily. And as a result, it's kind of for small scale decision making. So what I'd like to kind of think for you guys to go away thinking about is what the other side might look like, because it isn't necessarily a co-pilot type experience. And the first thing to do is put the human in the loop and put the driver in the car. And that's not to say there isn't, in the chatbot you're continually prompting. But you've got to think about those humans in the loop and what they might look in a regulatory world. And the chats that we've been having, I think the policy analyst is one, maybe doing the do. I think the legal kind of area is another, what does that look like? And then the leaders as well. What does that human in the loop look like? And our little demo that we'll run at the end, I'd like you to kind of think about where you pick out those personas, what part they might play as the human in the loop. Okay, the other thing is to use AI at scale for those higher volume, higher scrutiny type decisions is setting the right context. And in a regulatory process, and I'll use a submissions analysis because we do have an example coming up of that. There's some strict rules on that. Like in a co-pilot world, you can kind of go out to the internet and take whatever information you can possibly get about a topic. But when we're in the regulatory world, I think we've got to be very strict about what we use, because there might be some legal reasons that you can only use certain things and not other things. I know in the world of the Commerce Commission, for example, some of the consultations they do. So setting the context is very important. And as the humans in the loop, you've got to think, I think, really hard about that. Like, what is the right context in order to set those AI agents running? Examples of that to move away from the jargon are draft legislation, submissions themselves that come in, peripheral acts, or maybe some guardrails or other guidance that you might have. And they all lead to the map of where we're actually going, and the rubric or the set of instructions for AI. To trivialize that back to the kind of chatbot world, it's the prompts. But you've got to put a framework in to say, this is how I want the agents to behave, and these are the bounds I want to put around it. I think, most of you will be familiar with the procurement processes here for New Zealand government. And at the end of all of these RFPs, which we're very familiar with, they give you the evaluation framework, and they say 0 to 2, can't do it at all, 9 to 10, exceptional. That's a rubric. That's a set of instructions. And to use AI at scale, you've got to tailor that to the project that you have. And I think it's really important for the humans to understand what that is. We heard a bit about evidence and orchestration there from JD. And when we're talking about engineered AI across a project or across a business process, there are multiple kind of hairs running at all points in time. They run in various sequences. Sometimes they run in parallel. When you're dealing with massive troves of documents, to engineer that, you've got to break it up. If you try and put a pipe across the Cook Strait in one hit and it breaks, you're going to have a hard job fixing the pipe. You're probably going to break it up into little chunks and put little pipes in. So when one gets eaten by a shark, you just have to replace that little bit somehow. Don't make me go any further with that analogy, please, because I don't know where it's going. But it's time immemorial. You break things up in order to kind of engineer them for scale. And with that comes orchestration. And you've got to orchestrate these agents that are running, because they're doing multiple things for multiple people. But each of them should go and bring back something to the user, to the human, to say, this is what I've done. And then when you get to that court of law, down the track, you can show this and you can evidence why it's taken the actions it's taken. Okay, and I think lastly, and there's been a bit of a theme about it today, is just that kind of that literacy level of AI, and that kind of not being afraid to ask the stupid question. And I think the more that we keep these in IT, the less we will raise our AI literacy levels, and that curiosity won't be there. So our kind of mission is to make these as intuitive and as kind of interactive as we possibly can, so people aren't afraid to do that and they don't get kind of green text on a black screen. And ultimately, it's got to mirror the business process. You would be kind of castigated, I think, in some tech world for not being disruptive enough. You know, you have to kind of change things materially. Think about the iPod. You're all of an age, you probably remember it. But like before the iPod, there was the Walkman and the CD. The thing for CDs. What happened was there was a load of buttons on these things, and then the iPod came along and it's one button. I'd love to say that DataSing are about disrupting like one button, but we're not. And the public sector in Wellington, I think AI literacy has to be raised up a little bit before we can disrupt at that scale. So let's look at existing business processes where we know there's some opportunity and have a go at them. Okay, this leads into the demo. What I would like you to do is think about those icons on the right-hand side of the context, the rubric, the intuitiveness, and see how you could apply them in your business process. So we're taking, the use case here is basically 1,000 plus submissions on a draft piece of legislation. And it's mirroring loosely the process that a team of analysts would have to work through. The processing time, obviously, this runs for 2 minutes. The processing time is 6 hours when we do that from scratch. But I think the real power of this is the 6 hours is probably weeks and months in today's kind of landscape. And it all has to culminate in something that goes somewhere else, that's used before a select committee that was brought up at the start of this as well. So we'll get to the kind of the output there shortly.
This is like we're showing everyone the baby.
Yes, I've got 3 kids and it's pretty handsome. So yeah, we this is a product that we've developed with Martin Jenkins, and the design of this with real policy people has been fundamental. If techies tried to do this themselves, we would get it wrong, and we would spend 6 months trying to implement it and kind of shove a round peg into a square hole. So, you know, it's got to be driven from that business outcome perspective. Okay, we're coming to the end. But it may not be a report as the final artifact either. We do recognise that, and ideally this would be going back into your system of record, whatever that might be. But it is created pretty quickly. And I think the other thing with a submissions process as well, just before I finish, is you will find themes over the course of a submissions project that you then need to update your rubric or your set of instructions. And that's what this tool enables us to do. So you're not kind of bound to what you started with. It discovers new topics and themes as you use it, and it feeds those back in. That's enough out of me. Thanks very much, and I look forward to meeting you after.
So MakerTech, we are a team of entrepreneurial engineers. We started experimenting with AI about 3 years ago. We've had a dedicated AI business arm for the last 2. We've done some really good work in education, in retail, in healthcare. But I'm going to talk possibly about our most important work. Shouldn't say that, there's other clients in the room, but which has been our work with DOC and helping them in their important mission to help protect our unique species and habitats. So DOC is one of our most complex regulators. They're responsible for 1/3 of the land, and each year they have to process hundreds, if not thousands, of applications, leases, permits, easements. Have I missed anything, Joe? Licenses. It's a lot. So just thinking about one single permit, like a commercially guided tour, could involve the DOC team having to review hundreds of pages of statutory documents. And to make matters worse, oftentimes these applications are scanned PDF documents. So you can't even use like simple find and replace kind of text tools. So the problem's evident. Thousands of hours spent each year in low value data retrieval instead of high value conservation science. So it seems like a clear use case for AI. It's very dull, it's very laborious, it's very dear, it's very costly to DOC. But the problems with the off-the-shelf tools that they tried is that they got lost in the overlap. So what DOC does is very complex. So if you take the example of the commercially guided tour, that tour could span across a number of geospatial locations, And across those locations, there may be different bylaws. There may be different conservation plans that have different priority in terms of their hierarchy. And the AI tools just got lost in that overlap. So Doc needed a solution that could reason and not just retrieve and provide text. So we built a secure portable AI stats bot. Internally, I don't know if you know this, Joe, we were trialing the name the AI paralegal, but felt a bit old-fashioned, so AI stats bot won out. 3 key things about this tool. 1, works in natural language, so the Doc team can ask very specific questions and get very specific answers back. It's contextually smart, so as I spoke about before, the tool can understand different plans and different locations and give very specific answers back. And crucially, it de-risks hallucinations. So direct page citations, deep links to official documents so that the team have high trust in the solution. Results, less time in PDF documents, more time in the field. So 3 key things. Efficiency, the research is now in minutes, not weeks. Maybe that's even hours, actually. You said hours before when we were speaking, John. Maybe it's hours. So it's drastically reducing Doc's admin backlog. Consistency is really important. The tool doesn't get fatigued by reviewing lots and lots of documents. It doesn't kind of miss anything. It can look at everything and then allow that quality decision making for the human to do. And satisfaction, pretty sure nobody at Doc signed up to do data mining. They signed up to kind of protect our environment. This isn't just a tool in isolation. We've already started scaling this. So we've worked on a permission summary AI. So when you've got the whole application, how do you provide a summary for better EWE engagement? And then beyond this, there's the obvious potential for them fast track applications. So some work we're doing in education is relevant here. We're actually helping a very large education provider in New Zealand completely fast track how they do grading. So simple binary answers the AI tool can handle, and then the teachers asked to focus and the graders asked to focus on more complex, more nuanced questions. All right, 3 closing thoughts to take away that have already all been said, which is fantastic. It doesn't matter if it's black or white, but humans handle the grey. So a chap called Herbert Simon, anyone know that guy? Not even my friends at the front, really? Come on. All right. In the late 70s, Herbert Simon won a Nobel Prize in economics for his theory on bounded rationality. I'll give you the summary. It basically states that humans can only handle a certain amount of data in their heads at any one time, so we always make rubbish decisions, right? Now, AI is a logic beast, so it can really help us in terms of capturing all that information and presenting that information to us to be better decision makers. I'm still going to argue for now that humans understand nuance better than AI. Right? So while the AI is this logic beast, decision making and regulation is still a human craft. Takeaway 2, well done is better than well said. Experiment to think and learn. Paul, you've said this perfectly well. Don't get too lost in the strategy. You're probably in one or two camps. You're probably in the camp of being really excited about AI, really worried about AI. We tend to think in binary terms as human beings. The key is just to kind of start to experiment and think and learn. The strategy will reveal itself. So don't get too caught up in journey maps and service blueprints while everything moves at lightning pace. Get on the tools and try and build something. This is the flip side. So the flip side of that is to watch out for POC paralysis. Loads and loads of POCs and prototypes in the market at the moment, not much in production. So really think about 2 things when you think about how you integrate a tool into your organization. First, technically, obviously, you've got to integrate it into your systems of record, but more importantly, you've got to integrate it into your human operating systems because technology changes fast, but people don't.